Hey guys, tonight we are heading way east where mountains roll into mist and walls run like endless stone ribbons over the horizon. The air feels crisp, but not exactly fresh, because the dust from freshly cut rock already coats your tongue. You squint into the pale morning glow, and the wall, yes, that wall rises like a spine across the hills. You probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes hauling baskets up here, especially not without your morning coffee. Sticky rice for breakfast, sticky rice for glue. It's going to be a strange day. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you do, I'd love it if you posted your location and local time in the comments, just so I know which corner of the world you're sipping this history from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sun hasn't quite shaken off its sleep yet, spilling soft threads of light over the mountains. You lie on a coarse reed mat near the base of the slope, your back pressed against packed earth that still holds the chill of night. The silence isn't complete. Roosters call from farmsteads far below, and the occasional cough echoes among workers stretching sore arms and preparing for another day. Above you, the half-built Great Wall snakes along the ridges, its silhouette jagged where new stones are stacked but not yet smoothed. You rub your eyes and the wall feels endless, like someone unrolled a stone carpet across all of northern China, which in a way they did. Mainstream historians usually date the most famous sections to the Ming Dynasty centuries later, but the truth is messy. Earlier dynasties, including the Qin, started patchwork defenses, each adding stone, tamped earth, or wood. And somehow it grew into the colossal dragon of masonry you see. Even now, scholars argue whether calling it one wall is accurate, since it's really a series of walls stitched together like a badly patched quilt, except this quilt could repel an army. You shift and notice the wall's color in this early hour. Gray, almost silver, with dew slicking its stones. A bird something small and brown, possibly deciding whether your breakfast material hops nearby. The workers begin to file past, baskets swaying from yokes, their footsteps crunching on the gravel path. The smell of boiled rice lingers in the cool air, half breakfast, half building material. You can't help but laugh softly to yourself. In this place, your porridge might end up either in your stomach or in the wall. The quirky part, the one history teachers often skip, is exactly that, the sticky rice mortar. Imagine someone looking at their breakfast and thinking, this needs more lime. And no, not the fruit, but powdered limestone. Scientists testing the mortar centuries later discovered that amylopectin, a sticky carbohydrate in glutinous rice, binds with the lime to make a surprisingly durable paste. It's not only strong, it's resistant to water, which is handy when your megawall crosses rivers, mountains, and valleys. Of course, historians still argue whether this sticky rice secret was widespread or just used in special stretches. Some claim it was mostly employed in city walls, not the long frontier barrier. Others insist it was essential in wet southern climates, while in the drier north, tamped earth still dominated. Either way, as you watch, you see steaming bowls of sticky rice being carried up alongside stone blocks. A surreal breakfast service turn construction supply line. The sky slowly lightens, blushing pink at the edges. You catch yourself shivering and wonder if the rice porridge is as warming as the workers' brisk pace. One man, clearly more awake than you, jokes about trading his load for a nap. Nobody laughs too loudly, they're saving their breath, but a few smirks ripple through the line. The rhythm of this life is repetition, sun after sun, wall after wall. Your eyes wander beyond the construction. Far off, mist curls in the valleys, and fields stretch out like patchwork. Farmers are already at work, bending low, and the faint clatter of wooden plows reaches you. To the north, Hills roll into open steppe, where the wind always seems stronger, harsher. That's why the wall is here, to mark a boundary between settled farmlands and the vast shifting frontier. You imagine being a guard up there, squinting into that wilderness, half expecting horsemen to appear over the ridge. No coffee, just sticky rice mortar and a whistle for company. A rooster crows again, louder this time, as if to remind you that even epic walls don't change the fact that mornings are tough. You stretch and rise from the mat, brushing dust from your tunic. Workers continue their climb, some already humming, tunelessly setting a pace that feels inevitable, as if the mountain itself demands it. The Great Wall doesn't look like it was built in one lifetime. It looks eternal, as though the ridges sprouted stone on their own. But here you are, watching. The sweat, the porridge, and the persistence that make eternity possible. Dawn finally gets around to being day, and the work line thickens like a slow river of baskets, poles, and sleepy faces. You step into the flow, the gravel crisp beneath your sandals, and match the careful, heel-to-toe rhythm the porters use to keep the yokes from biting their shoulders. Breath fogs a little in the cool air, and each exhale seems to measure the slope, one sigh per meter of uphill. Someone ahead whistles a thin tune that rises and falls with the path, and the rest of you follow the melody as if it were a rope. A foreman posts himself on a flat stone and slaps a tally board with his palm sharp. Dry clacks that jump across the ridge. The board is marked with neat columns. Each column is a crew. Each crew is a dozen people plus a spare if luck holds. He ticks your line in red, practical as sunrise. Beside him, two clerks unroll bamboo slips like small flexible ladders of information. Names, quotas, distances, notes about which team gets the good rope, and which team gets the rope that looks like it has already retired emotionally. They tuck a cinnabar brush behind one ear and nod at you to pass. You shoulder a pole to feel what the morning actually weighs. The yoke flexes with a familiar complaint. The baskets on each end bump your calves with the personality of impatient goats. Stones thud against one another inside, a conversation of edges. Your arms open a little wider, and you discover the balance point by accident too far forward, and your spine protests. Too far back, and the baskets kiss the gravel. The trick is letting your hips walk first, the rest of you falling into agreement afterward. Mainstream fact slides in with the dust. During the Ming Dynasty, wall building became a long campaign rather than a burst, organized through military garrisons, the Weizuo system, so labor here is a mix of soldiers, hired artisans, local villagers on corvée, and the kind of specialists who can glance at a rock and know which face wants to live outside. You can tell the veterans by their hands, rope scored, lime pale, and unbothered by splinters dot in a bend where the wind likes to sit. A drummer warms his fingers and then bumps out a steady, almost lazy sequence of beats. Hauling cruise time there. Steps to it, not marching so much as swaying forward in a joint decision with gravity. Across the slope, a horn answers, low, hollow, a sound that makes the mountain seem like it has just cleared its throat. The foreman raises a flag to echo the horn and points his crew toward a half-built parapet that needs feeding. Garlic moves through the morning like a rumor. A cook with a ladle bigger than his patience waves a bowl under your nose and tells you to eat for strength and spirits. You're not sure which spirits, but you swallow a clove anyway and feel your sinuses applaud. Quirky tidbit. Some crews knot rooster feathers under their yokes for luck and for sharpness of sight. Whether that helps anyone see danger sooner is unclear, but it makes the yokes look festive, and the rooster feathers survive what motivation posters have not yet been invented to do. The path steepens, cut into tight switchbacks that make the same view reintroduce itself from slightly different angles. On the third pass you notice a cluster of talismans tied to a pine, the bark stitched with scraps of red cloth, a few bronze coins threaded onto cord, a little clay figure with a smile that refuses to be worn off by weather. A porter taps the coins with his fingernail each time he passes and refuses to explain why. The gesture seems to say, because it doesn't hurt. Sandals tight, a veteran murmurs when the gravel coarsens. You look down, hemp saws, leather straps, dust. That wants to be everywhere. He shows you how to wrap a length of cloth around your instep and the strap itself so the edge won't cut after the third load. He also shows you how to flip the yoke off your shoulder in one smooth move so it lands on the ground like a well-behaved cat. You practice 3 times. Your yoke lands like a drawer full of pots. He smiles, says, "You'll find it," and you choose to believe he is not lying. The wall's half-height stretches above the slope, layers distinct as a cake you're not allowed to eat. Here, in the mountains, stone is king. Foundations of big, uncomplaining blocks, faces of trimmed gray. Hearts stuffed with rubble that only needs to stay put. Down in the flatter lands you passed yesterday, you saw lifts of rammed earth hang to pounded inside wooden frames until the layers were hard enough to drum. Historians still argue whether this mixed palette of stone and earth is about geology alone, or whether different governors preferred different techniques to display their budgets. And loyalty. Your shoulders vote for whichever rock is closest. Crew leaders swap jokes to keep the air from becoming only work. One says he's switching to a lighter stone diet next month. Another claims he's saving for a pair of cloud-soft shoes. Imported from the immortal realms, which everyone agrees is ambitious footwear planning. You add that back home, you lift weights for fun, and several people stare as if you just announced you collect extra winter on purpose. The laughter takes a while to stop. At a rest point, an older woman adjusts the splints on a handcart's wheel and taps the rim to check its mood. She sells lengths of rope and little packets of herbal powder for aching joints. She also sells gossip hefty enough to require its own sled. Which section chief has a soft spot for a certain mason? Which mess tent is slipping more millet into the rice? Which crew swears their section's fox keeps watch like a dog? You buy a length of rope you didn't need just to earn the right to hear about the fox. Clerks circulate with ink and patience, marking who has delivered how many loads and whose loads contain more dust than stone. Red stamps kiss the bamboo. Slips, leaving little square approvals that feel official enough to quiet the mountain for a second. The clerks also carry thin switches, not to punish people, they insist, but to point at things emphatically, a technique that works as well on stones as it does on stubborn people. You pass a stack of lime waiting for its fate. The sacks leak. White like the snow this ridge almost never sees. When the wind stirs, a fine powder halos everything: lips, hair, the edges of words. Someone sneezes so hard his yoke bounces, and he catches it with the reflexes of a person who has practiced. Catching more than he has practiced sleeping. You tuck a damp cloth across your nose and breathe through it. The air tasting chalky but cool. The morning grows a second wind. So do you. Your walk turns into a timed ritual. 90 heartbeats uphill, 6 breaths of pause. Lift the yoke, trade. Shoulders, repeat. Between loads you stand inside the wall's shadow and feel your back release a little. One knot at a time, like untying a difficult morning. It occurs to you that this grand frontier line is built from a million small agreements. That stone will be stone. That hands will keep moving. That time will keep melting from dawn to noon to dusk without needing your permission. A mason waves. You over and places your hand on a block that looks identical to its neighbors. Listen, he says. He taps it with his hammer and then taps the block beside it. The notes are different. One high and true, one a little sleepy. He swaps them in the course of 2 blinks so the true one faces the path where weather hits. Hardest. Each piece knows where it wants to live, he tells you. He says this in the same tone a tea master uses to discuss water temperature, and you nod with the same reverence, even though you're mostly hearing hit rock until it sings. You rejoin the line, shoulders tender but game. Far below, Terraces glint with water, and a farmer's hat tracks the sun. Far above, a squad of soldiers appears along the crest, their spearheads exaggerated points of morning light. They look down at all of you and probably pretend they have always loved logistics. There's a myth you've heard about the wall being visible from the moon. You keep it to yourself. The crew would find it funnier than you want to be. Here, in the grit and garlic, the only distance that matters is from basket to parapet, from breath to breath. You focus on that step, balance, breathe, joke number. 3 on hold until you can feel your face again. The foreman's tally board slaps once more. Shift, he calls, and the crew peels off like bark, each person knowing exactly where the next task waits. You go with them, part of the river. Now in the morning carries you along, as if you were another stone that happened to learn how to walk. You angle around the bend and step into the flat where masons command the rhythm. Here the mountain has already surrendered. Squared blocks, cut faces, and stacks lined like half-written sentences wait for completion. The wall rises in layers, and you are staring at one mid-sentence, the stones laid like careful syllables. Each mason works with a deliberate swing of the hammer, tap-tap press, as if punctuation matters more than speed. Dust clouds sigh into the air, settle on eyebrows, and turn everyone into pale statues that occasionally blink. The soundscape changes. Instead of the grunt and shuffle of porters, you now hear stone talking to stone. Chisels ring, mallets drum, and somewhere a level board creaks like a tired elder. Every few minutes, a mason lifts a plumb-line hemp cord weighted with a bronze plummet and lets it dangle. The cord sways like it is considering a nap, then steadies. Walls do not trust your eyes, they trust gravity. You lean in, watch the cord fall against the face of the stone, and understand that straight is a truth only the earth can declare. Mainstream fact makes its way into your awareness. Main builders reinforced walls with tamped earth cores. Dressed in stone, mortared with a paste of lime, water, and a surprising guest star sticky rice soup. It wasn't just poetic branding. The amylopectin in rice starch gave the mortar unusual cohesion, helping it resist weather and even earthquakes. That's right, breakfast became structural engineering. You imagine an ancient foreman saying, "Eat your porridge, it holds up walls." Try putting that on a cereal box. A quirky moment comes when a mason grins and shows you his chisel, the tip wrapped in thin leather to soften the blow. He swears the leather is from a guy who sang better than any opera, though opera won't exist for a few more centuries. You're not sure if you should believe him, but you laugh anyway, partly because the goat's legacy seems oddly cheerful. He pats the tool like it is a stubborn apprentice. You notice mortar mixing nearby. A trough the size of a bed holds lime, sand, and the aforementioned rice porridge. Workers churn it with shovels, the mix bubbling faintly. It looks edible if you forget what's in it. A boy sneaks closer with the universal expression of someone considering a taste. An older woman swats his hand away before history records the first mortar poisoning. They scoop ladlefuls onto the stone courses, spread it like icing, then press blocks into it. The mortar oozes politely, and the next stone tucks into place like it belongs. Scholars still argue whether the rice mortar was intentionally invented or stumbled upon accidentally when cook's leftovers got stirred into lime slurries during a rush. Was it genius science or creative spillage? Your shoulders vote for does it matter as long as it holds? The masons here seem to agree. They gesture to the wall behind them, centuries of confidence hardened into place. Sticky rice, not just for dim sum. You crouch to examine the face of the wall. The stones are not random rubble. They are dressed, edges trimmed so they lock together with the patience of puzzle makers. A mason offers you his hammer for one experimental tap. You raise it, strike a chisel set against a block, and feel vibration climb up your arm like a curious cat. The sound rings sharp, then dies. The mason nods politely, not terrible in universal craftsman language. You hand the hammer back. Before you ruin a dynasty, beside you, a worker smooths mortar with a wooden trowel and hums under his breath. The tune has no words, just a rolling hum that matches the arc of the tool. Another worker tells you the humming keeps spirits happy. Since walls hate silence, you imagine explaining that to modern architects. Don't forget the humming quota. Around midday, a supervisor with a brush makes small characters on a bamboo slip, noting progress. Each course of stone has its own line of poetry in numbers and names. Some say these records were more about tax accountability than history, but here, standing with dust on your eyelashes, they feel like diary entries the wall insisted on writing. One block wobbles as it settles. 3 masons lean their shoulders against it, humming louder, pressing until the mortar burps and the block sighs down. They clap each other's backs like they've convinced gravity to renew its contract. Someone jokes that the rice spirits are pleased. Someone else mutters that the rice spirits are always hungry. The laughter is soft, as if they don't want the wall to overhear. You spot jars nearby, wide clay pots holding water drawn from the stream below. The lids are weighted with stones, but condensation dribbles down their sides like tears. A porter ladles some out, rinses his hands, and sighs. The water tastes faintly of the stream's moss. He tells you the sticky rice mash goes bad fast in heat, so fresh batches are made daily. No leftovers. Unlike you, who are already planning to hoard cookies in your bag, the mortar never gets yesterday's porridge. A small detail catches your eye. A bird has nested in the scaffold beams above. Every few minutes it darts out, returns with a straw. Or an insect, while masons ignore it. The bird is building its wall too, less ambitious, but no less serious. You feel a quiet kinship. Both projects rely on rhythm, patience, and a refusal to admit the scale is absurd. Heat presses down now, flattening. Shadows. Someone brings out fans woven from reed and waves them absent-mindedly between strikes of the hammer. You borrow one. Discover that fanning yourself while carrying a basket is a coordination puzzle best left unsolved, and hand it back. The masons grin. Clearly, they've seen this show before. There's a tale whispered by one of the younger workers that sometimes, in unfinished stretches, people would bury charms or even animal bones in the foundation to ward off collapse. Not common, but not impossible. Historians still argue whether such deposits were ritual or rumor. You stare at the mortar trough and imagine it swallowing a charm with a shrug. Sticky rice probably doesn't care about charms. It is its own magic. The afternoon lengthens, and the wall gains another course of stones. From where you stand, it already looks older than you, as if walls age instantly once they're aligned. You reach out, press your palm to a block, and feel warmth soaking through the skin, as though the stone remembers every hand that placed it. For a second, it's less a wall and more a chorus line of effort. Each grain of rice, each drop of lime, each grunt and hum is here, suspended in mortar. A mason waves you back into the porter line. The day doesn't pause for sentiment. You balance your yoke again, hear the whistle of the tally drum, and let your body fold back into rhythm. The wall keeps rising behind you, one sticky rice breath at a time. The path tips upward like someone has quietly increased the incline on a treadmill you didn't agree to use, and you fall in beside a file of porters whose yokes creak with the conversational complaint of old wood. Your shoulders negotiate with the pole left, then right until the balance point finds you. The baskets snap against your calves with each step, and the stones inside answer with little knocks, like they're tapping out encouragement in a language made entirely of edges. Slope grabs your calves in both hands. Dust lifts as you go, turning sunlight into a gauze that the whole crew breathes together. The air tastes of lime and garlic breakfast and building, your favorite improbable duet. Someone calls, "Mind the turn," and the line tilts, hugging. A switchback carved into the mountain's ribs. You follow the footprints where others' sandals bit into the grit, heel to toe, the way the veterans do, knees slightly bent to let the shock slide through your body instead of stopping at your spine. You keep time to the ridge drummer's lazy pulse, a heartbeat for feet. Every ninth beat, a horn answers from above, and you shift hands on the yoke, giving your right shoulder a chance to remember what happiness felt like. The porter in front of you ropes scars across his collarbones like pale vines, has tied 2 rooster feathers to his yoke. They wag when he climbs, tiny pennants for a private parade. Sharp sight, he tells you over his shoulder, and good jokes. You promise to provide one of those. He says, try for both, and grins. Mainstream fact drifts up the slope with the dust. Builders favored ridgelines not just for dramatic views, but because a wall on a crest needs fewer courses to present the same barrier and gives watchmen sightlines over both flanks. You glance right, terraces and patties, bright as coins. Glance left, wilder ground, wind looking for a reason to organize itself. The wall threads the seam between them, and you are a bead on that thread, climbing. Foreman waits at a rest stone, tally board tucked under his arm, and flicks his fingers. 5 breaths. You set the yoke's tail on the ground like you were taught, easing the baskets down instead of thunking them. Your shoulders bloom into sensation, heat, ache, relief, like someone has opened a window in your skin. A young porter hands you a strip of cloth soaked in cool water. Wrap the strap, he says, showing how to fold the cloth over the bite point so the edge doesn't saw into your neck. You tuck it, tighten it, exhale. The cloth is a small miracle wearing the disguise of common sense. Ahead, the path narrows where the mountain wall stares straight at you. A crew has hammered steps into the stone, uneven and honest. The yokes must be lifted high to keep the baskets clear. You raise yours, arms trembling, and feel the line's motion roll back through bodies, the way fish turn together in a river. At the second step, your sandal skates on a patch of dust. Instinct shoves your hip under the yoke. The baskets swing, then settle. The man behind you catches the back with one hand until your balance returns. He doesn't speak, just nods like he's been waiting there for years to do precisely that. A pair of women pass you on the inside of the turn, the fast lane, apparently. One carries water, the other an armful of reed mats for the next scaffold. They move with that long, economical stride, which says their bodies have done this before and intend to keep doing it for some time. You try to copy the stride and nearly headbutt your own basket. The woman laughs, nudges your elbow. Shorter. Steps on the steep, she says. Save the warrior stride for songs. Quirky tidbit. A porter in a blue cap opens his palm to show you a tiny, polished pebble moon smooth, thumb-sized. He keeps it under his tongue on hard climbs, he says, to keep his mouth from drying out and to give his jaw something to do besides invent complaints. You try it with a similar pebble and immediately upgrade your respect for multitasking. It works. The mineral coolness settles your breath. Also, it is hard to argue with a pebble. The line crosses a wooden causeway laid over a gully, 2 logs capped with planks, the whole thing singing gently under weight. You look down between the slats and see water shining far below, a thin thread, stitching stones apart. A boy stands at the far end, counting aloud as if making sure you are bringing the correct number of steps. 200, 201, 202. He forgets the next number, shrugs, starts again. Auditing by optimism. Halfway up the next switchback you pass a sled, 2 runners with a stone lashed onto them. Its face chalked with a character indicating the destination course. 4 men pull on ropes. 2 behind brace the load with poles. Snow is rare here, but the runners slide on wet mud and reed sheaves laid like a temporary carpet. A lead man calls cadence. Pull, plant, breathe. Pull, plant, breathe. He winks at you. Our stone prefers to ride, he says. Your baskets answer with a jealous clink. Above, a watchtower skeleton looms ladders. Posts, the beginnings of a roof like a hat sketched in the air. Guards lean over the unfinished parapet, knotting cords, passing down a water gourd on a rope so the crews don't have to climb for a sip. One calls, "Save some for us," and someone below yells, "Save us for us," and the call in response gets a tired cheer. Even the horn sounds amused. Historians still argue whether the labor here was mostly forced corvée or wage labor through the garrison system, and whether the grim tales of deaths under the wall are statistical truth or later. Storytellers thunder. The men and women around you mostly argue about lunch. A kettle waits on a flat gray rock higher up, its lid ticking from steam. The smell drifting down is rice and millet with slivers of radish, the kind of meal that gets described as warming, and becomes fact when your stomach votes. You reach a shelf in the mountain where the path widens into a stony apron. A crew rests their yokes on a rack, a clever thing. 2 uprights with notches to cradle poles, so shoulders can drop without dumping loads. Your baskets bump into place. Hands reach to steady them, and the whole rack becomes a brief marketplace. Of weight, you roll your neck until it pops like a small drum. The relief arrives with the mood of a polite guest who brings fruit. Mason points at the tag on your stone, an inked character running like a tadpole, and directs you left, where a crude ramp leads to a half-built wall face. He taps the ramp with his foot. It's packed earth, tamped with wooden rammers whose heads are polished from use. "New this morning," he says, pride happy as bread. You take the ramp, lean forward, and your baskets surge up with the smallest invitation of gravity handled. Just right dot at the top. 2 setters squat like chess masters and negotiate where each block will live. You kneel, tilt the yoke off, and they ease the stones out with both care and impatience. One palms the mortar with a flat trowel rice paste shiny as porridge, and lays it thick enough to ooze when pressed. He sets your block, listens to it, taps it until it falls a breath. The wall absorbs the moment like a lake drinks a pebble's splash. On your way back down, the drummer swaps hands. The beat shifts slightly quicker, like the sun has had a second cup of tea. You test a joke on the porter with the rooster feathers. "How many stones in a wall?" He pants, says, "1 less than before you brought these," and grins. You concede you walked into that one. He says, "You walked uphill into it," and you both laugh that quiet, breath-saving laugh the mountain permits. The dust has climbed your shins and refuses to come down. You wipe your face with the cloth strip and discover you've drawn a pale line across a brown mask. A clerk passes, looks up from his bamboo slips just long enough to say, "Good, now you belong to the mountain," and clips another red stamp that looks like a small sunset dot at the next turn. A man with a bamboo flute leans against a pine and plays 5 notes, then stops, then 5 more. He's marking the breath for a crew farther below, he explains. 5 notes climb, then rest, and his tune floats down like a rope. The wind catches it, and for a heartbeat, it sounds as if the wall itself hummed through the stone dot. By the final rise of this circuit, your legs negotiate a ceasefire with the slope. You focus on small arithmetic: 20 steps, breathe, 12 steps, breathe, lift the yoke, trade shoulders. The path becomes a rosary of pebbles. Your jokes go into savings for later. Your breath becomes a metronome. And when the apron comes into view again, you find something like joy waiting there. A rack for the yoke, a jug of water in the shade, a bowl of rice with a single slice of pickled plum that tastes like thunderheads look. You eat, you drink, you lift. The wall rises by the width of a palm and the length of a day. And you sweaty, dusty, pebble-jawed, you are one of the reasons it rises at all. You head back down for the next load, and the mountain, finally satisfied you mean it, lets you pass as if you belong. Lunch on the wall is less a break than a negotiation. The wall wants you back to hauling. Your body wants to lie face down in the nearest millet sack and sleep until the dynasty changes. The compromise looks like you sitting cross-legged on a Half-set block, a steaming bowl balanced on your knees, while the air turns from dust-scented to broth-scented. Steam curls like pale dragons out of every pot, and the smell of garlic and scallion threads its way between you and your appetite. Until there's nothing left but surrender, the cooks ladle rice gruel into clay bowls lined up like soldiers. A boy darts between them with a basket of pickled plums, dropping one into each portion as if scattering blessings. You cradle your bowl and blow on the surface, watching ripples wobble like tiny walls of their own. The porter with the rooster, feathers on his yoke, plops down beside you and says, "The plum is the commander of this army." He bites into his, puckers so hard his eyebrows nearly touch, then grins. Commander fierce today. Mainstream fact arrives with the meal. The daily rations for wall laborers often included millet, rice, garlic, and a splash of beer-like drink, not extravagance, but carefully calculated fuel. Salted vegetables added minerals, and yes, sometimes, even tea leaves when supply lines were generous. The cooks knew what kept bodies climbing. You know because you're eating it now, spoon after spoon. Until the gruel is less food and more strategy. Nearby, a circle of masons unwrap parcels of scallion pancakes, tearing them into halves, then quarters, so everyone gets a piece. They eat quickly, talking with mouths full, comparing notes about mortar ratios. More rice, less lime, one insists. Too sticky, another replies. You've discovered that debates about glue can sound as heated as arguments about politics. Historians still argue whether the sticky rice, lime mortar was adopted primarily for its superior adhesive qualities, or because it resisted weather better than alternatives. Judging by the cook's muttering, you think it might also have been adapted because workers kept eating the mortar rations when nobody was watching. He slaps a hand away from the paste bowl. Soup, not wall, he scolds. Quirky tidbit slips. Into the scene, one laborer pulls a small clay whistle from his sash and toots a bird call between mouthfuls. To your surprise, an actual sparrow answers from a beam above. The man beams. Friend visits every noon, he explains. He offers you the whistle, but your first attempt sounds less like a sparrow and more like a hiccup. The sparrow flaps off, unimpressed. Practice, he says, patting your shoulder. Wall is long, you'll have time. The breeze freshens, sliding down from the mountain top. It flips a matte edge and delivers a sniff of resin from pine logs. Stacked for scaffolding. A pair of soldiers lean sunburned. Armor scuffed share their rations under an awning of reed mats, their swords propped nearby. One holds out his bowl to you. Trade half, he offers. Inside is duck egg, salted and split like a yellow moon. You nod, swap half your gruel, and taste the sharp tang. He nods, satisfied with the deal. Meals here are more economy than cuisine. The lying, someone cracks a joke about the rice being sticky enough to build with. Everyone laughs, but there's truth in it. You glance at the mortar tub's rice slurry glistening in the sun, lime dust floating like flour. The smell reminds you of sourdough gone on a journey and come back slightly improved. One mason dips his finger and lets you taste a drop chalky, yes, but faintly sweet. Don't swallow too much, or you'll set like stone. You almost believe him. A foreman claps hands for silence and recites a short poem. Not about walls or emperors, but about a pomegranate tree in his mother's courtyard, fruit splitting red under a summer sky. He pauses at the end, embarrassed, but no one mocks him. Instead, bowls thump against stone in applause. Even Rooster Feather Man nods solemnly. You think, strangely, that poems hold walls up as surely as mortar. Your eyes drift to the horizon, where mountain after mountain staggers away like half-buried dragons. The wall curves along their backs, partly built, partly imagined. Workers rest in scattered knots, each group its own small universe. Dogs lie sprawled on their sides, ribs ticking. A baby wails from a sling. Its mother rocks without looking up from her bowl. Two boys play knucklebones with pebbles, betting who will get the last pickle. The pickle disappears mysteriously, and both claim victory. Justice is postponed until supper. The rooster feather man points to the wall's edge, where a gourd of water swings from a hook. Drink before the horn, he advises. You do, the cold water shocking your teeth, sharp enough to make you feel human again. Someone else dunks a cloth, rings it over his head, steam rising off his hair like incense. The sun tilts overhead, marking the end of the lunch truce. The drummer sits cross-legged, tightening the hide of his drum with a stick. He tests a beat, then another, as if deciding what rhythm will carry the afternoon. You feel your stomach. Sigh full but not foolishly so, satisfied but ready to protest when asked to climb again. The wall waits, stones patient as mountains. You run a thumb along the rim of your empty bowl, imagining it filled again with soup or rice, or perhaps courage. Lunch ends with the same quiet authority it began with: a horn, a drum, and the sudden collective shuffle of bodies rising. Bowls stack, gourds clink, spoons disappear into sashes. You sling your yoke across your shoulders, its wood now cushioned by the cloth trick you learned earlier. The rooster feathers bob in front of you. The sparrow returns to its beam, chirps once, and watches as if counting. You stand, wipe dust from your knees, and take your place in the moving line. The rice in your belly sits heavy but loyal. Your hands grip the yoke, and your breath falls into step with the drum. Lunch has passed, the wall still climbs, and you like it or not are part of the afternoon's mortar. The path down from the wall snakes toward the valley where canvas tents and reed huts form a temporary city. You trail behind a line of laborers, their yokes empty for now, their chatter carrying like river water over stones. Dust puffs around your ankles with each step, and you can already smell smoke from small cooking fires curling through the air. The camp is a live part workplace, part village, part reluctant family reunion that nobody ever leaves. You duck under the flap of a tent, blinking as the light shifts. Inside, the floor is layered with woven mats, the kind that always smell faintly of straw and sweat. A woman crouches over a pot, stirring a thin soup, while a child plucks at a reed toy with stubborn determination. The soup smells of garlic and millet, humble but promising. She ladles a spoonful into a bowl, hands it to you without ceremony, and shoos you toward a crate to sit. Mainstream fact finds you here. Wall builders lived in makeshift camps, often staying for months or even years at a time. Archaeological digs have uncovered remnants of their daily life ceramics, cooking fires, tools worn smooth from endless use. Life wasn't glamorous. It was functional. People slept where they worked, and their world shrank to the rhythm of stone and soup. The quirky side peeks in as you notice a man outside balancing a rooster on his arm like a falconer. He bows, whistles, and the bird spreads its wings dramatically before hopping back down. He claims with straight-faced authority that the rooster can predict storms. If feathers ruffle before nightfall, rain, he explains. The rooster looks unimpressed but allows itself to be admired like a feathered oracle. You glance at the sky, then back at the bird, wondering whether to pack a cloak. You step out into the camp's central space where workers lounge around low fires, steaming bowls balanced in their palms. One group sings a song in uneven unison, voices catching on the higher notes, laughter carrying when someone gets it wrong. Another circle of men sit cross-legged, playing a game with carved wooden pieces, slapping them down with exaggerated flair. You lean closer and realize the game is some ancestor of checkers. Strategies muttered like military secrets. Historians still argue whether entertainment in these camps came mainly from imported traditions or grew organically within them. Some scholars believe dice and board games spread along the Silk Road, while others insist the workers invented their own diversions, borrowing from scraps of memory and imagination. Watching the game unfold, you suspect both are true. Necessity. After all, is the mother of invention, and boredom is her loud cousin. The sun lowers, gilding tent tops and painting smoke trails orange. A donkey brays, offended by something trivial, while a puppy scrambles after a scrap of flatbread. Children chase each other between ropes, their laughter shrill and bright, a counterpoint to the dull ache in your shoulders. The camp is weary, but not defeated. Someone gestures you toward another cluster of tents where seamstresses sit with needles flashing in the dimming light. They patch worn tunics, stitch new sandals from leather, knot ropes for buckets. The pace is unhurried but relentless. Survival depends on every thread. A seamstress laughs when you trip on a pile of sandals and hands you one to try on. It's stiff, awkward, but better than bare feet on stone. You thank her, and she waves you off, already pulling another thread through another whole dot as twilight deepens. A smell of roasting beans drifts from a brazier. You turn to find an older man crouched beside it, carefully stirring a pan. He offers you one, slightly charred, earthy, and bitter on your tongue. He calls it soldier's food, cheap, filling, portable. You nod, chewing slowly, the taste grounding you more than pleasing you. Laughter erupts nearby. A storyteller has begun his performance, hands carving the air, voice rising and falling with practiced rhythm. He recounts the tale of a mountain spirit who tested the builders, hurling boulders down at night, only to see them set again by morning. His point is clear. Persistence triumphs even over spirits. The children lean forward, eyes wide. Adults chuckle, shaking heads, pretending not to believe. You believe a little. The stars blink awake overhead. Smoke threads upward, twisting into constellations. Somewhere, a soldier's flute plays a slow tune, thin and wavering, but it hushes the camp more effectively than any foreman's shout. You lie back on a mat, the ground hard but familiar, the sound of distant hammering still echoing faintly, even in supposed rest. The rooster, oracular or not, flaps onto a post and crows prematurely. The falconer grins. "Storm tomorrow," he repeats. You roll your eyes, but tuck the thought away. The wall waits, storms or not. The camp sighs as fires sink to embers. Shadows lengthen, voices fade, and sleep creeps in on the edges like mortar-filling cracks. The camp is hushed when you wake again, though not silent. A few embers still glow in braziers, hissing when someone splashes water onto them. You rise, stretch, and follow a group of men toward a larger tent set apart from the rows of sleeping quarters. Its canvas is stiffer, the ropes tauter, the guards at its entrance straight-backed. This is where the engineers and officials sleep, or rather scheme. You slip inside as the flap rustles closed behind you. The interior smells faintly of ink and bamboo. Scrolls are unrolled across a low wooden table, each covered with careful brush strokes, angular lines, and annotations that look like an artist's doodles until you realize they are measurements. You crouch near the edge and study one plans for a curved bastion. Its angles sharp enough to catch morning light like a blade. Mainstream fact. Ming Dynasty engineers used detailed designs to guide the wall's construction, adjusting for ridges, valleys, and rivers. It wasn't one endless uniform wall, but a network of overlapping defenses, watchtowers, and garrisons, all carefully plotted. And here they are, debating them by candlelight, voices low but intent. One official points to a steep incline drawn in ink, shaking his head. Another jabs a finger at a curve, raising his voice until it carries across the tent. You can't follow every technical phrase, but you feel the tension stone is stubborn. Mountains are stubborn, and men are more stubborn still. Historians still argue whether central oversight truly directed every stone, or if local commanders made decisions on the fly. The scrolls say one thing, but the uneven lines of the wall itself sometimes say another. At the far end of the table sits an elderly man with a brush tucked into his knot of hair. He does not argue, he doodles, or so it seems. You edge closer. and realize he is sketching a rabbit in the margin of the scroll. Its ears perked, eyes bright. He glances at you and smirks. "Good luck charm," he murmurs, "stronger than rice mortar." You chuckle softly, unsure whether he's joking. But the rabbit stares back at you with unsettling gravity. A soldier enters carrying a tray of sticky rice cakes, steam rising in curls. The engineers reach automatically, plucking them up without breaking conversation. You do the same, biting into soft sweetness laced with honey. The thought sneaks into your mind. Is this the same rice that binds stone? The overlap between food and fortress makes your mouth twitch in a half smile. Quill scratches. Echo, as another official marks a map of supply lines. Roots stretch like spiderwebs from mountains to rivers to farms. Without them, the wall would never stand. You imagine peasants trudging miles with sacks of lime and jars of rice porridge, the lifeblood of the mortar. Logistics is not glamorous, but it is relentless. The candlelight flickers, gold pooling on the scrolls. The air smells of wax, ash, and starch. One man stands suddenly, slamming his palm onto the table. Everyone stiffens. He insists a certain watchtower must be taller, or the enemy will see it as weakness. Another counters that stone is scarce, labor scarcer still. The rabbit-sketching elder hums to himself and adds a flower beside his drawing. You suspect he has survived more arguments than you could count. You step back outside into the crisp night air. Stars burn sharp above the ridges, the wall like a dark ribbon against them. The guards shift their weight, yawning discreetly. Behind you, the argument continues, muffled by canvas, but persistent, like a heartbeat of bureaucracy. You smile wryly. You thought stone was heavy, but opinion is heavier still. Near the tent, another worker is carving characters into a flat stone with careful taps. You crouch to watch. He explains that they leave marks of their names, villages, even jokes, embedded forever into the wall. He shows you one, a crude drawing of a fish. From the coast, he explains, a reminder of home. The wall is not just stone and rice, it is memory mortared in dot as dawn threatens the horizon. The engineers finally emerge, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. They roll up their bamboo scrolls, tuck brushes into belts, and march toward the wall once more. You trail behind, the echo of rabbit doodles, heated arguments, and rice cakes lingering like smoke on your clothes. The morning light climbs over the ridges, gilding the top of the wall as though someone has painted it with molten bronze. You trudge after a team of workers carrying empty clay jars, their footsteps beating a dull rhythm on the packed earth. The air is cool still, but the promise of heat lurks just behind the rising sun. You smell dust, and faintly, the metallic tang of water yet unseen docked down in the valley. The group halts beside a spring-fed cistern where buckets dip and splash. You crouch, cupping your hands, tasting the coldness as it slides across your tongue. Refreshing, but faintly chalky. The men pour bucket after bucket into the jars, sealing them with cloth. These are destined for the lime pits and mixing vats. Without water, mortar is powder. With it, stone becomes fortress. Mainstream fact. Lime mortar was the backbone of Ming Dynasty construction, created by burning limestone to make quicklime, then mixing it with water and sand. Yet, the secret binding agent sticky rice made it unusually strong and durable. You trail behind as the men balance jars on poles, their shoulders straining. Every drop matters. The quirky detail arrives in the form of a boy trailing along with a gourd, sloshing something suspiciously sweet-smelling. He explains proudly it's not just water, it's water flavored with plum juice. Better for the rice, he insists. You doubt any engineer-sanctioned plum juice mortar, but he beams like he's discovered an empire-saving secret. You take a sip. It tastes like melted candy. Maybe it won't hold stones, but it holds his imagination. The jars arrive at a wide pit lined with scorched stones. A foreman gestures, and men begin tipping lime into shallow basins. The powder billows, stinging your nose, making you sneeze violently. The workers laugh, clapping you on the back, their teeth flashing white against dust-smeared faces. Steam rises as water splashes in, hissing like snakes. You step back, eyes watering, but they move confidently, stirring with long wooden poles. Historians still argue whether every region used sticky rice uniformly, or if only wealthier garrisons had the luxury. Some mortar samples show unmistakable rice starch molecules. Others appear more ordinary. You watch as one worker carefully ladles rice porridge into the lime mixture, the thick liquid sinking slowly. The smell is surprisingly pleasant warm. Cereal blending with acrid lime. Oddly breakfast-like, if breakfast could burn your eyebrows off. A cook, amused at your pinched face, hands you a small bowl of plain porridge on the side. Not for mortar, he assures, chuckling. You taste it. Bland but filling, grains swollen with water. You imagine the strange overlap again, same grain fueling stomachs and walls alike. No wonder sticky rice earned legendary status. It nourished men and monuments equally. The mixture turns creamy, pale, viscous. Workers dip reeds in, then smear test patches onto stones. They nod approvingly when it sticks, setting firm in minutes. The foreman mutters, like glue. You touch it cautiously. The surface is smooth, surprisingly warm. You pull your finger away quickly, worried it might bond you permanently to the empire. Birds circle overhead, scavenging stray grains. A donkey nearby noses at a fallen gourd, braying indignantly when shooed away. The sun rises higher, baking the earth, the pit now, glowing with heat and effort. You realize this is the true alchemy, not gold or silver, but lime and rice, turning dust into permanence. Workers load the sticky mortar into wicker baskets lined with cloth, hauling them toward the wall in a line that looks almost ceremonial. Each step seems heavy, each basket precious. The wall itself waits, patient, as though it knows it will outlast all these hands. You wipe sweat from your brow, the chalky taste lingering in your mouth. Behind you, the boy with plum juice proudly smears a dab onto a small stone and sets it. Upright, it wobbles, falls, and he sighs theatrically. Needs more plum, he declares, and trots off to refill his gourd. You laugh, shaking your head, but secretly admire his stubborn creativity. By midday, the heat feels like an extra weight draped across your shoulders. You trudge alongside the workers back up to the construction site, where the wall rises like the spine of some slumbering stone dragon. The baskets of sticky rice mortar arrive, set carefully in the shade of scaffolding. Everything smells faintly of cooked grain and sun-warmed dust. Men climb ladders, their feet slipping on worn rungs, balancing stones on their backs or in slings. You crane your neck to watch as they reach the top, where others crouch like hawks, guiding the stones into place. Each block is heavy, carved just enough to fit, but not so exact that it slides in without coaxing. There is hammering, grunting, a chorus of human percussion. Mainstream fact: the Great Wall during the Ming period was built largely from tamped earth, brick, and quarried stone, depending on terrain. Here in the mountains, stone dominates, cut from nearby ridges and hauled painstakingly upward. With the sticky rice mortar, these stones bind so tightly that blades cannot easily slip between them. You squint, realizing each joint is sealed smooth, like the crust of a baked loaf. Down below, another team mixes fresh batches, the air clouded with lime dust. Workers ferry baskets upward in a rhythm that feels like a ritual. Mortar slapped onto a stone, block pressed into place, joints sealed. It's like assembling a puzzle where every piece weighs more than a donkey. Quirky tidbit: one fellow takes his task too theatrically, slapping the mortar with exaggerated flourishes. The others tease him, calling him the cook, and sure enough, he responds by shaping the mortar into a crude rice dumpling before smoothing it out again. You chuckle. It seems even monotony breeds mischief. Historians still argue whether the quality of the wall was consistent across its vast length. Some stretches crumble easily, built in haste or with poorer materials. Others, like this section, endure centuries of storms and wars without surrender. You glance at the carefully aligned stones here and wonder if luck, resources, or pride makes the difference. A boy scampers past with a basket half his size, refusing help. His bare feet slap the stones, leaving little chalky footprints. His determination makes you grin and wince, remembering how your own shoulders ache after carrying nothing heavier than curiosity. You're waved up a ladder, breath shallow as you climb. At the top, the view stretches across valleys and peaks, green and brown in endless folds. The wall slithers away into the horizon, new towers rising like teeth at uneven intervals. A cool breeze brushes your face, carrying the faint smell of pine dot up here. You crouch beside a mason who dips a trowel into mortar, spreading it like frosting onto a stone's edge. He gestures for you to try. You grip the trowel, scoop, smear. It splatters onto your tunic, white stains spreading across the fabric. The mason laughs, patting your shoulder as if to say, "Good enough." You help press a stone into place, the vibration traveling up your arms as it meets the mortar bed. You imagine the stone settling, content, knowing it will not move for centuries. The thought makes you oddly reverent, like shaking hands with history mid-birth. A hawk wheels overhead, its cry sharp against the clatter. The men barely notice. They've seen hawks, storms, even wars pass above their heads while they keep laying stones. One mutters that even if invaders someday breach the wall, the mortar will hold stronger than men's courage. It's a sobering thought, softened by his grin as he reshapes a lump of mortar into another dumpling before smoothing it flat again. The sun beats down, sweat streaking your temples. But the wall keeps rising, block by block, mortar by mortar, like bread swelling in an oven. And you, smeared and sun-dazed, feel part of the recipe now. The afternoon stretches long, shadows narrowing as the sun blazes white above. You wipe grit from your lips, tasting salt and lime, and follow the workers as they shuffle toward a shaded alcove carved into the hillside. A pause at last. This is mealtime, the rare punctuation in the endless rhythm of stone and mortar. They set down baskets wrapped in cloth, steam rising faintly from within. When the wrappings are undone, the scent of sticky rice fills the air, sweet and earthy. Wooden bowls are passed around, rough but serviceable, and each scoop comes with a ladle of watery broth flavored with greens. The heat makes you thirst. More than hunger, but the rice is grounding, filling every hollow in your stomach. Mainstream fact: sticky rice wasn't just construction material. It was a staple food in much of China, cultivated for centuries, prized for its dense energy. You realize with every bite that the same grain binding stones together is binding men together too. Each mouthful seems to strengthen the resolve to keep climbing, keep stacking, keep building. The quirky tidbit arrives when one man reveals a pouch of pickled radish, bright pink against the dull rice. He doles it out sparingly, each worker receiving a sliver as though it were gold. You chew one tart, sharp, electric on the tongue. The others laugh at your puckered face, slapping their knees. Even in monotony, flavor is a small revolution. Historians still argue whether the sticky rice used for mortar was diverted from food stores or grown deliberately as an industrial crop. Some suggest granaries were split, one for bellies and one for bricks. Others doubt emperors would spare such precious grain for walls. But here, sitting cross-legged with mortar stains on your tunic, you see how the two roles blend seamlessly: fuel for men, glue for stones. A boy balances his bowl on his head, strutting until the rice slides off into his hair. Laughter bursts out, rice scattering, dogs rushing in to snap up the spoils. The foreman shakes his head but smiles disciplined, bends at mealtime. You sip broth slowly, savoring its faint tang of mountain herbs, wishing your modern lunches had This kind of atmosphere minus the lime dust. Beyond the shade, the wall gleams in the sun, stones stacked higher since morning. The structure seems alive now, growing while you rest, like a vine inching upward with every heartbeat. You picture it drinking the sweat and laughter of the men, setting those moments into its mortar alongside the sticky rice dot as the meal wins. Down, bowls clatter into a bucket of water, rinsed for the next round. A stray grain of rice clings to your sleeve, and for a whimsical second, you imagine whether it belongs in your stomach or in the wall. Maybe both. Maybe the Empire doesn't care where, so long as everything sticks. You stretch, bones creaking, belly heavy, eyelids tempted by sleep. But the workers are already rising, dusting themselves off, shouldering baskets. Rest is brief. The wall waits. For no dream. You stand too, reluctantly, the taste of radish still tingling on your tongue, the echo of laughter mingling with the endless clang of stone. The clang of bowls fades quickly, replaced once again by the steady beat of labor. But now, another sound rolls over the valley boots, striking dirt in unison, voices shouting rhythmically. You glance downhill and see a column of soldiers, armor, gleaming like dull bronze in the waning sun, marching alongside the wall, their steps pound in perfect time, dust rising in synchronized clouds. Each man carries a spear, tipped with iron that flashes when it catches the light. Shields clatter against their backs, banners snap in the breeze, crimson and black like tongues of fire licking the sky. The workers barely look up, accustomed to these daily parades, but you pause, caught between admiration and uneased at mainstream fact. Garrisons were stationed along the Great Wall, often housed in the very towers you see climbing into the distance. Soldiers drilled constantly, ready to repel raiders or signal allies with smoke and fire. This wasn't just a wall of stone, it was a wall of men, discipline, and vigilance. One quirky tidbit stands out. The officer leading them wears a feather, tucked dramatically into his helmet, swaying with every stride. It seems impractical, but it gives him a theatrical flair, as though he's auditioning for a role in a storybook. The workers snicker, dubbing him the Rooster. You hide a smile too, picturing him crowing at dawn. Historians still argue whether the soldiers resented being stationed at the wall or saw it as honor. Was it punishment duty, endless boredom staring at empty plains? Or was it prestigious, guarding the Empire's spine? Watching them drill in the heat, sweat glistening. On faces you can't quite tell. Some look weary, others fierce, all bound by the same rhythm of boots and breath. They break formation briefly, practicing maneuvers. A line of shields locks together, spears thrust forward in perfect arcs. The sound is oddly soothing, wood and iron meeting air like a drumbeat. Then horns blare, deep and resonant, rattling your ribs. The echoes mix with hammer blows from the wall builders, an accidental duet of war and labor. A soldier near the rear stumbles, his boots slipping in a patch of mud. His comrades hoist him back up without missing a step, their formation seamless. Again, the officer, feather bobbing indignantly, doesn't notice or pretends not to. Nearby, children imitate the soldiers, stomping in the dust with sticks for spears. They fall out of rhythm almost immediately, collapsing into giggles. One girl ties a scrap of cloth around her head as a banner, waving it so hard she topples over. You laugh quietly, reminded that play often mirrors duty. Just with more joy. As the drill concludes, the column halts by the wall. Some soldiers lean on their spears, gazing at the rising structure. For a moment, builders and fighters stand side by side, two halves of the same empire. You sense mutual respect, if not camaraderie. They all bleed into the same project, stones and steel alike. The officer raises his hand, feather trembling, and the unit pivots sharply, marching off toward a half-finished watchtower. The thud of boots fades, replaced once more by the softer thrum of mortar and stone. Yet the rhythm lingers in your chest, Like a heartbeat borrowed from the wall itself, you exhale, shoulders loosening, and return to the scaffold, where work continues without pause. The wall grows, and so does your sense of how many lives, laborers, engineers, soldiers are stitched together in this endless spine across the land. The sky darkens not with night, but with sudden storm. One moment the wall blazes gold, the next, gray clouds muscle across the heavens, rolling in like waves. A wind sweeps down from the mountains, carrying dust that whips your cheeks. Workers glance up nervously. Rain is coming fast. A sharp crack of thunder rattles the scaffolding. Then the downpour begins, sheets of water cascading from the sky, drumming on stone, splashing into lime mortar. The wall glistens instantly, every block slick, rivulets streaming like silver threads down its face. Mainstream fact: the Great Wall sticky rice mortar was renowned for its resilience against weather, unlike weaker mixtures that crumbled. In heavy rain, the rice-lime concoction resisted erosion, its binding properties astonishingly strong even centuries later. You watch now as workers test it, unknowingly, rain hammering, mortar clinging. A quirky tidbit emerges when one worker holds out his bowl, catching fresh rainwater, then stirs in a stray grain of sticky rice. Soup from the heavens, he grins, slurping theatrically. Another follows suit, gulping mouthfuls as though the emperor himself had sent free lunch. You smirk, half tempted to try. Historians still argue whether storms like these slowed construction significantly or were simply accepted as part of the rhythm. Some claim entire days were lost, while others insist work never stopped. Rain or shine, stone still rose. Here, though, you see men huddled under tarps, smoke from damp fires sputtering, and suspect the truth was a mixture. Lightning forks across the sky, briefly illuminating the entire ridge, the wall stretching into mist. Unfinished towers bristling against the storm. The sight is eerie and magnificent, the structure appearing both fragile and eternal. Rain seeps into your sandals, trickling cold between toes. Workers scramble to cover baskets of grain with cloth, but bold sparrows swoop anyway, stealing wet kernels. One man shakes his fist at the birds, slipping comically in the mud. He lands with a splash, groaning while everyone else chuckles. The wall itself seems to breathe, stone slick and shining. Water runs down the joints but doesn't loosen them. Instead, the mortar looks firmer, as though the rain has tested and approved it. You reach out, fingers brushing the cold surface. It's smoother than before, slick as polished clay. By late afternoon the storm eases, rain softening to drizzle, then to mist. Workers emerge cautiously, dripping but grinning, shoulders steaming in the sudden return of sunlight. Fires are rekindled, smoke curling lazily. The wall gleams in new hues, darker, richer, the sticky rice mortar pale against wet stone. Children splash in puddles, their laughter chasing away the last grumbles of thunder. A dog shakes itself furiously, spraying droplets like arrows into everyone nearby. You laugh too, because the storm has broken the monotony, leaving behind a refreshed world. The air now smells sharp lime, wet stone, and damp earth. You inhale, deeply, strangely comforted. The wall stands unbroken, shining as though it welcomes every test. You realize it's not just stone and rice, but memory and endurance, waiting patiently for centuries to prove itself. The storm has rinsed the land clean, and the morning that follows feels softer, like a fresh page waiting for ink. The wall snakes off across the hills, its whetstones drying under a hesitant sun, but your attention drifts downward toward the valley floor, where the world moves with quieter purpose. Below, a line of merchants wends along a dusty track, their caravan long and patient. Camels groan under bulging packs, the weight swaying with each uneven step. Brightly dyed cloth peeks from bundles, silk shimmering faintly even in muted light. Bells tied to harnesses jingle lazily, the sound carrying faintly upward to where you stand. Mainstream fact: the Great Wall often paralleled or intersected trade routes of the Silk Road, functioning not only as defense but as a customs line. Goods moved from distant land, spices, jade, precious metals, and of course, silk itself filtered through watchpoints where officials tallied and taxed. Yet here you see the human side. The quirks hidden between ledgers and tariffs. A merchant, in a teal robe, fusses endlessly with his turban, adjusting it every few steps, much to the annoyance of his camel, which tosses its head in protest. Another trader insists on humming the same tune over and over, so monotonous that his companions roll their eyes but endure it. You smile, because even the Grand Silk Road had its small irritations. Historians still argue whether the wall hindered or actually fostered trade. Did it function more as barrier, slowing caravans with strict checkpoints, or as backbone, providing stability and safety for routes otherwise vulnerable to raids? Watching the merchants chat and laugh as they pass beneath its shadow, you sense both sides might hold truth. The wall is both gate and guard, both obstacle and reassurance. A child trots alongside the camels, clutching a small wooden toy horse. Its wheels squeak, tracing lines in the dust, but he seems content to march miles this way. His mother balances a basket of pomegranates on her hip, stopping now and then to sell one to a soldier watching from the tower. The transaction is simple, cheerful, the fruit exchanged for a smile and a nod. One trader stops to rest, opening his pack to reveal glass beads catching the light in jeweled sparks. Children rush to peer, faces glowing with wonder, as though tiny stars had been spilled into the palm of his hand. He laughs, scattering a handful into the dirt for them to chase. You notice how the caravan pauses often, not in haste but in rhythm. It matches the tempo of the wall's construction above a slow, steady pulse, never hurried, yet always moving. Builders glance down between hauling stones, catching glimpses of foreign robes, strange wares, and sometimes hearing snatches of unfamiliar languages. The wall and the road speak to each other, silently, across stone and dust. A soldier stationed nearby leans on his spear, eyes tracking the caravan wistfully. You wonder what he sees: opportunity, boredom, envy? Perhaps he imagines walking with them, away from endless drills, following the smell of cinnamon and myrrh to distant lands. His face softens when a merchant offers him a dried fig, which he accepts sheepishly, chewing with the slow delight of a man savoring rare sweetness. As the line snakes out of view, dust settling behind, the valley grows quiet again, only faint. Hoofprints and scraps of conversation linger, blending with the hum of cicadas. The wall looms above, silent yet attentive, as though it has witnessed such caravans for centuries and will continue for centuries more. You return to your place on the stones, realizing that the Great Wall does not just divide, but observes. It watches soldiers drill, workers toil, storms lash, and caravans wander. Every life becomes a thread stitched into its length, binding empires and individuals in ways as sticky as the rice mortar itself. Twilight pours down the mountainside like warm ink, turning hard edges soft and making the wall look older by the minute. You follow a thin ribbon of smoke to the worker camp where braziers bloom like small red flowers, each one a circle of warmth, carved out of the evening chill. The air smells of pine pitch and char, of damp cloth steaming dry, of onions sizzling in shallow pans. Voices gather, too low at first, then brighter, like moths arriving late but determined to dance. You ease onto a short stool near one brazier, the seat wobbling just enough to keep you awake. Someone tips a gourd toward your cup, a thin, sweet tart. Drink made from fermented rice, wash barely a buzz, mostly a mood. You take a careful sip. It tastes like the memory of an orchard. Across the fire, the porter with rooster feathers in his yoke settles, feathers now drooping like tired flags. He waggles his eyebrows at you and says, "We survived the slope, so we've already won." You agree, Because arguing with anyone whose shoulders carried stones all day feels like a hobby for people with spare lungs. Mainstream fact finds its seat by the coals. Beacon towers at intervals along the wall lit signal fires by night and smoke by day, sending messages down the line faster than any rider could gallop. A guard at the next brazier gestures upslope to a squat tower crowned with a clay-lined hearth. If raiders show, he says, we send 1 flame for a few, 5 flames for many. He grins. Tonight no flames, only soup. The men around him nod, shoulders loosening. Peace has a taste, and tonight it's onion broth. A singer clears his throat and plucks a 2-string fiddle, the bow rasping at first like a cartwheel in need of grease. Then it settles, the melody gliding in slow curves. The song unfurls a story of a mason who tried to chisel his sweetheart's name into a hidden stone so the wall would remember her. Romance, the drummer sighs, tapping the rim of a clay pot. The most durable mortar. You laugh, and so do the others, but nobody asks which stone. Just in case the story is true, and the night prefers secrets, historians still argue whether nightly gatherings like this were tolerated, encouraged, or quietly discouraged by stern overseers. Some records praise harmonious rest, others fret about idle tongues. Watching the foreman lean back with a cup and hum along, you suspect policy bent to the practical. A rested crew climbs better tomorrow than a silent one tonight. A joke saves a ladder's worth of grumbling. Also, no one can outlaw onion soup. The quirky detail arrives wearing sandals a size too ambitious. A young apprentice strides into the circle with a lacquered fan painted with a fierce tiger and announces he will recite a poem he composed while hauling. He opens the fan with a snap and smacks himself in the forehead. The circle erupts. He bows with exaggerated dignity and begins anyway, voice rising over the giggles. Strong mortar binds purr. Rice and lime and hope, also my sandals. He gestures grandly and nearly falls backward into the brazier. The rooster feather porter reaches out, catches him by the sleeve and says, deadpan. The tiger approves. Joke number 1 lands as softly as ash. A mother rocks her child in the firelight, the baby's fist wrapped around a loop of twine that used to tie a mortar basket. The child chews it solemnly, discovering the joy of knots. A dog chooses a spot by your ankle and sighs the sigh of a creature who has finally found the perfect square foot of earth. You scratch behind its ear. It thumps its tail twice, officially. Adopting you for the evening. Someone passes a plate of sesame cakes, soft and warm. You take one. The top is speckled with seeds that glitter like embers. The bite is humble, a little sweet. Exactly what your hands have been asking for without telling you. Careful, says the drummer. Those turn mortals into songbirds. You chew slowly, suspicious of promises your throat can't keep. On the far side of the circle, a soldier mends his sandal strap with a bone needle, tongue tucked in concentration. You ask where he learned such neat stitching. Tower duty, he says, never looking up. A tower teaches patience, and sandals teach humility. He ties the knot with a flourish, then imitates the officer with the feathered helmet by strutting. Once around the fire, head cocked, plume imaginary but unmistakable. The circle howls joke number 2, a perfect impression. The singer's tune changes, sliding into something brisker. A pair of women clap patterns into the air, flat palms. Fingertips, knuckles like rain learning choreography. Others join with spoons on bowls, the rhythm catching despite sore wrists. Someone starts a call in response. Who carried stone? We carried stone. What carried us? Soup and song. The rhyme is simple, the beat simpler, but it's enough. Your palms tingle. Your breath comes easy for the first time since noon. You realize that the wall claims daylight, but night belongs to the circles by the fire. A man sets a small clay pot on the coals and lifts the lid with iron tongs. Steam scopes your face, scented with ginger. He pours a thimbleful into your cup and warns, sip slowly. This tea climbs ladders. You oblige, and the heat flowers down your throat, finding joints you'd forgotten you owned. He adds, my grandmother swore ginger chases wind from bones. You ponder the meteorology of skeletons and decide grandmothers outrank. Scholars in certain sciences doubt the conversation eases toward home. People speak of orchards and rivers, of festivals and first snows, of the way a particular village cat patrols rooftops like an admiral. One man describes the smell of rain in his province, like bamboo and thunder arguing politely, and everyone nods as if they've smelled it too. Nostalgia becomes its own map, the fire a compass pointing toward places your feet can't go tonight. A gray-bearded mason lifts a flat stone and a charcoal nub. Names, he says, so the wall remembers us. One by one, people scribble sigils, nicknames, villages, a quick fish, a tiny house, a feather. When the stone is full, he blows the ash away, presses his palm to it, and sets it aside to be tucked into the inner fill tomorrow. You draw a little drum, and the drummer gives you a solemn bow like you've passed an exam. You didn't know you were taking. Joke number 3 shows up disguised as practical advice. The rooster feather porter announces, if you dream you're carrying 2 baskets, roll over. You're sleeping on your friend's boots. Groans and laughter. A nearby snorer, for emphasis, demonstrates a sample of the sound he will make. Later, someone tosses him a bundle of rags for a pillow. He hugs it with the clutch of a man reunited with destiny. The beacon guard checks the tower once more. No signals tonight, only the steady glow of watch lanterns pricked along the ridge. Like a constellation that believes in schedules. He returns to the fire, quieter now, and sits with his spear across his knees, the metal cooling to a sober shine. You feel the day empty itself out of your muscles. The brazier's coals collapse, sighing. Sparks lift and vanish, little red birds, flying nowhere. Overhead the night spills thick and kind, the Milky Way a faint rumor behind a veil of smoke. The wall is a darker line against dark mountains, sharp softened, intentions the same. Before you turn in, the apprentice with the tiger fan approaches, holding out a strip of paper. For luck, he says, handing you a brush-scribbled character G in firmness. The strokes wobble, but the meaning doesn't. You tuck it into your sash like a quiet oath. The cap dims, fires dwindling to buttons of light. You lie on your mat, one hand draped over your stomach, the other under your head. Somewhere a flute leaves 5 notes on the air and stops as if to say, that's enough for tonight. Your eyes close to the soft arithmetic of crickets, and breath to the memory of sesame and ginger, to the sense that the wall is exhaling with you, relieved to rest for a few hours before the drum calls morning back. Dawn brushes the mountains with silver again, as if the night never happened, only folded itself neatly and set it on a shelf. You wake with the workers to the cough of braziers being coaxed alive, sparks floating like reluctant fireflies in the pale air. Your body is stiff but not broken, shaped now by the rhythm of climb, lift, mortar, and laughter. The wall stands exactly where you left it, lines of stone stretching away in both directions, as though it grew taller while you slept. You help pack up the camp. Mats rolled, clay pots stacked, coals buried, so no stray ember takes liberties with the dry grass. The rooster feather porter yawns so wide his jaw creaks, then mutters something about inventing morning without mornings. Joke number 1 arrives before breakfast, and the day feels lighter already. As the crew shoulders baskets and poles, the overseer claps his hands, voice calm. One more tower today. That means new mortar, new rice gruel, new sweat sewn into the seams of the wall. The thought makes you both weary and oddly proud, like being assigned a role in a story you didn't ask for but can't deny. A scholar's fact drifts into place. Archaeologists have found that sections of wall built with sticky rice mortar have survived centuries of rain, earthquakes, and invading armies, their bonds stronger than many later reconstructions that used modern cement. It seems the humble bowl of porridge doubled as an architect's secret weapon. Historians still argue whether sticky rice mortar was a carefully guarded innovation from its earliest days, or simply one solution among many, adopted gradually along different stretches of the wall. You picture scholars at a conference passing bowls of rice back and forth like detectives examining fingerprints. Quirky detail sidles up with the rooster feathers again. The porter confesses he once tried mixing wine instead of rice into a mortar batch. To honor the ancestors, he insists. The wall did not honor him back. His batch crumbled within days, and the mason made him drink plain water for a week as punishment. Joke number 2 cements itself right there. The ascent begins once more. Stone baskets creak against bamboo poles. Sandals grind dust into the slope, and the first chants restart like a choir shaking off sleep. The singer with the 2-string fiddle hums instead of playing, saving his voice for later. The apprentice with the tiger fan walks behind you, careful this time not to smack himself, but still tapping the rhythm against his thigh. Your mind drifts as the steps multiply. Each boulder lifted feels less like defiance of gravity and more like surrender to rhythm, like you've become an instrument in someone else's long symphony. You wonder who, centuries from now, will touch this wall and feel your sweat dried inside its stones. Will they know there was laughter here, and ginger tea, and jokes about sandals? Or will they only see the size, the scale, the myth? At midday, the mortar buckets are prepared again. Rice gruel, steaming and thick, poured into the lime, stirred with wooden paddles. Steam coats your face, sweet and acrid at once. You dip your hand, careful not to burn, and watch the mixture string like honey. Someone chuckles. Breakfast for the wall. Joke number 3 lands easily. Tired arms lifted by the thought dot as the wall grows, so does the horizon. You look out, and the land rolls away like a green and brown ocean. Villages like shells scattered on its surface. Farmers are already in the fields below, tiny dots bending and straightening, their own rhythm no less eternal than yours. A hawk circles high, shadow darting across your path, and disappears into the blue dot. Evening comes slowly. The final stones of the day are nudged into place, mortar smoothed with palms until it shines damp and patient. The overseer nods once, then lowers his arms. The crew exhales together, a single body disassembling into weary individuals. You sit on the wall itself, back against a fresh block, and let your legs dangle. Below, torches blink on, pinpricks. Along a path that might as well be a constellation, a worker beside you says, "The wall is endless." Another replies, "So are we." Historians would raise eyebrows at such optimism, but here in the dim light, it sounds more like a lullaby than a manifesto, and with that, the day folds itself again. Wind dash down, approximately equals 300 words. Now the pace slows, as though even the mountains wish to sleep. The fires in the camp shrink to soft embers, tiny stars stitched into the fabric of the ground. Workers lie on reed mats, their breathing a chorus of quiet waves lapping against stone. You lie back too, spine eased by earth, eyes softened by darkness. The great wall curves in shadow above you, no longer a task or a trial, but a long, gentle companion. The night air carries the faint sweetness of cooked rice, mixed with pine. Smoke and distant water trickling down unseen slopes. The blend is comforting, like a blanket woven of familiar scents. Somewhere a dog shifts in size, somewhere a child mumbles in sleep, somewhere a flute drops 2 notes and then rests, satisfied. You let your thoughts loosen, drifting like mist across ridges. The day's weight dissolves baskets set down. Poles unburdened, mortars smoothed into silence. Muscles stop their complaints, bones their chatter. What remains is the soft hum of being, steady and kind. The wall breathes beside you, not as stone or symbol, but as a patient friend holding centuries. Without hurry, Its length vanishes into dark horizons, but its presence is close, warm, solid under your palm. You know tomorrow will bring more stone, more rice, more laughter tucked between sighs. But tomorrow does not exist yet. Only this moment does. The hush, the hum, the steady beat of your own heart blending with the quiet mountain air. Sleep folds over you like a second mat. Gentle, grounding, endless.